little fellow is worth a lot of money these days if you follow the stock market at all. Probably worth more than any other company that isn't generating a cent of profit. Well, actually is worth far more than any other company not generating a cent of profit. And that's what Twitter does. Twitter twerps, not twerks. But
thank you.
There you go. So we're really getting down into kind of a whole nother set of social media. How many of you use Twitter or have Twitter streams for your congregations, or, I mean, not personally, but professionally for the work we're doing? So 4 or 5 of you do.
All right.
So I'd like to look at Bonnie or Donna, because you do, are fairly active on Twitter, and Marge asked the question, what are some examples of how you would use Twitter or why you would use Twitter?
Well, one thing that we do is we try to integrate the messaging. So we have an email newsletter, and then we share it. It gets posted and shared on our Facebook account and on our Twitter account. So that's primarily just trying to get the word out in different venues. That's just the simple.
Knowing you have different readers or different ways people are
I hope so.
No, but that doesn't automatically.
No, well, our e-newsletter software allows us, once we do the newsletter, to then share it with social media. So it does it automatically. You sign in and it posts it. And so it's very easy once it was set up. We use Create Send, but I know a lot of people use Constant Contact, and they may have the same ability to do that. I'm sure they all do, or iContact, or different ways. We use Create Send, and that's through our web host, so it's just all integrated easily.
I'd like to share a thought here. You need to think of Constant Contact, Facebook, your website as all cross-pollinating each other. And if you use keywords when you tag a photo that you put in Facebook or your website, and I know we use WordPress for our website, you're able to tag the photos in a description that doesn't appear on the photo and on the site. But those words are essential for getting search engine optimization. And if your priest asks you to take over the website or Constant Contact or any of those, run as fast as you can.
To what?
Change your phone number, get a new identity. But no, you want to create that cross-pollination, create a brand, and use the keywords to get the search engines to find you. Because it's taken us months now, for the search engines to find St. James and the Hills, Hollywood. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's a time-consuming, long-run process. And it's easier to take care of a newborn. It really is. But
and so I'm interested when you're saying, use those keywords. How did you decide what your keywords were beyond the name? But that's a good point about repeating the name across media.
Well, there's places to hide on your web page descriptions of photos and so forth. And this is something we're having to learn how to do. I mean, it doesn't come naturally.
Right.
And but if you use words like hunger, is going to get more attention for your comment about supporting the food bank, or homeless. And you just have to keep developing that. You don't know what words specifically the search engine's going to key on. But now we have so many search engines out there. We need to do everything we can to hit those keywords to attract the attention so the search engines find us. Because when we first got our website up, If you search for St. James in the Hills, it went to everything that wasn't St. James in the Hills. It went to these other sites that knew where churches were in Hollywood, but it didn't know to go to our website. So it takes time with posting things to your website, keeping it fresh, and you're trying to use keywords for this search engine optimization. So your website starts to be functional.
Right.
It can be pretty, but it's got to be functional, or there's no point in spending the time and money.
Good point.
As well as the same with Facebook.
I happened to attend a workshop this week on optimizing,
Great.
and a couple of suggestions that the speaker gave. Go to Google AdWords. It's no cost to you. Sign up an account, but you're not going to sign up, if you know what I mean. You're going to utilize it by going in there and pretending that you're going to start a campaign. Type in what you think people would use if they were looking for you, and it will give you back how people have entered that information in the past. And just to give you an example, the guy said he was working for the Florida Marlins, and so he typed that word in and found that over 100 entries were made, Florida Marlins with an E, M-A-R-L-E-N-S. And so he used that as a way to draw people to the site because 100 people spelt it wrong. So things like that, you know, but it really, it just gives you a list of ways that people type stuff. So, you know, you might be in Miami,
really good point.
but they spell Miami wrong all the time. So there's ways for you to make your site work better by using the way that people are putting it in the Google search.
Thank you. Any other comments at the moment? Those are really great comments, and kind of the more you can learn about how people are using it, or terms, even through Google Analytics, that will tell you terms that they search to get to your website. Those are helpful and things that you can reinforce there as well. I think that the notion, and we've talked about this before, is that to kind of find new people, and this is something that we've really seen with Twitter, it allows you to kind of narrowcast and find that group of people who care about and are talking about topics that you care about and that you're talking about, and allow you to seek out those subjects when you search for them and find and then follow those, quote, people that are engaged in the conversation. If they say something you really like, retweet it. Pass it along, because chances are they're going to then start following you and perhaps looking for things that you say. If someone supported you, you know, give them a shout out, thank them for that, and pass along and connect people to them. And I say kind of get hash sensitive, get hash browned here. And want to come to you in just a second here, but this notion of, you know, really looking at selectively, sometimes you'll see people using 6, 7 hashtags behind a tweet, but being selective about those kinds of topics allow you to really start narrowcasting in a like hunger or homelessness, Fort Lauderdale, or whatever, really start building those kind of narrow sharing kind of communities. And we think of this massive thing called Twitter. In effect, more and more, these kind of very vertical communities are coming together to carry on those short conversations. To me, that's a great power here, number one, and number two, to also use it to broadcast that immediate news. We need coats to people who are following. Yes, sir.
There, I just wanted to give this warning. Never, be very careful with how you use your hashtags.
Great.
Because sometimes if you use the wrong hashtag, you end up with a lot of different people coming to the wrong thing. And also, if you use too many hashtags, people use less interest. And B, you narrow down your tweet to to about a group of 3, so that you and about 2 other people have ever used that hashtag in the history of Twitter, and there are a lot.
Wonderful.
So
That's
if you
really useful.
you have to be very careful and selective with the hashtags that you use.
Like I said earlier, we need to change roles here. Thank you. Those are really, really, really good pieces of advice.
Narrow it down to corned beef.
And a hashtag is just a pound before a word.
What's its purpose?
It's just to group tweets
So-
together, so you don't have to look as much. Hashtag, it's just a pound before a
pound
word.
sign, right.
Or 2. And no spaces. Otherwise it breaks everything up.
So I think, an example of that would be at the last general convention, hashtag #GC 2012 became the way that if you wanted to follow real time what was happening on the floor of the House of Deputies or what, for example, and you on Twitter, you again searched for hashtag 2020 and all of a sudden the stream of anyone making comments on that topic would be happening real time and you could follow it. So that's the benefit of hashtags. As you said, it really narrowcasts you, but I want to call out one comment you made, that be careful about the words that you use because you could be attracting and it could be a whole different topic than what you're intending. So again, observe, learn, and then participate. Great examples.
It might seem very daunting, hashtags, hash browns, what's the difference, twerping. I mean, but it really isn't. I mean, once you've started using it and you get used to it, you're like, oh, it's very intuitive. Like, then you'll understand once you start using it, oh, that's what he was talking about. It might seem scary at first, but once you really start getting into it, like, for example, you'll know when it's the best time to put out a tweet. Like, you wouldn't put out a tweet at 2 o'clock in the morning because no one necessarily checking it. But you'd know that people get to work, not that I do that. And then the first thing they do is they might check their Twitter feed or they might check their Facebook feed. So you know that at between 8:30 and 9 or at lunchtime at 12 or 5 just before they leave is probably the best time to send out a tweet or to send out something. What happens with a hashtag is like it's basically almost like the topic of a conversation that someone's interested in. They click in and they see everything that someone has spoken about on that conversation. They begin to like you if it's Facebook or follow you if it's Twitter. And then all of a sudden you now have people who every morning are seeing what you're doing or however often you post something. So it's not that difficult. It seems difficult at first, but once you get into it, it'll be like, hey, that's what it will actually come to you. It's very intuitive, and a lot of it is very user friendly. And then you'll see, I could teach a class. I guarantee you, once you start getting into it, maybe 6 weeks of getting into it, you'll be up there teaching it.
Better.
You'll be doing it.
Like I said, 2 followers, you're an expert.
I have a question about hashtags and choosing the words in your hashtags. We've just learned that we can use Google AdWords to figure out what people are typing into Google and other search engines to try and pick our words optimally. So how do I figure out what hashtags are being used for what? So I don't pick something that only 3 people have ever used.
Let the experts answer the question.
A lot of times, if you try to use a phrase of words and it's real long together, that's when you know you've got too long of a hashtag. And then you really narrow it down to a very small group or a group of 1. Also, sometimes if you see the new trending topics, sometimes if you look at that, you'll be able to see how people are using those words and what they're using those words, and you can kind of guess from context what they're using that word for. So this way you isolate words that mean something completely different from what your goal is, and focus on words that are much closer to what you're trying to set out to do.
Is there somewhere you can go to do that, or are you just doing it on your Twitter account?
Yeah, you kind of have to guess on that, honestly. There is no perfect solution to figure out which hashtags are meant for each individual case.
But like you said, you're kind of observing, you're learning, you're searching, you're seeing. But yeah, there's not an exact science, but I think all those things help you make good decisions. Okay. Twerp?
I don't want to be one.
All right. I'm going to share one other little short piece of video with you. This was a piece actually that I just searched Google Plus to see if anybody here in any of our programs are showing up on this. And this was a wonderful piece actually that St. Mark's has posted on their Google Plus page. And Google Plus, in my parlance, is Google's answer to Facebook. Okay, it's their way of competing, but it's the same general notion of creating communities and conversations and attracting interest. But the point here is not just that it's on Google Plus, so again, broader, more sophisticated, and I'm not recommending you use that, but it's just the use of video is becoming easier and more prevalent, whether it's a 6-second piece of video in Snapchat, or it's 15-second Vine, or it's a 2-minute piece that now you can capture with a small camera and post. This is a more produced piece. Frankly, I was blown away by it because I see a lot of TV commercials that are not this well done. But I wanted to just share it because it showed up and it was produced here, I believe, and I just thought it was amazing. Just a couple of things to think about, though, when we talk about social media before you go, because it really is this blur between, like nothing else, between your personal life. And when I said, you know, how many of you are on Twitter, a lot of hands went up. How many of you are using it professionally? A lot of hands went down. But this is really where this blurs, no matter what media that you're on, because what you say and address publicly, you really are a representative or ambassador of your organization or group. And this is where it becomes a fine line between what you're sharing and how you manage that. You can't hide if you're commenting on other things. It's really important to identify yourself and where you're from, particularly if it's an issue related to your organization, because that authenticity and honesty and directness is such a fundamental aspect of everything we do anyway. But certainly on social media, it's an expectation here, there. Also, when you post something, I appreciate, Father, what you said before, you know, what you were thinking, what you might want to do, and kind of what you've posted are two things, because it is forever. And while social media may be a transient thing, you know, you may say, gosh, that Twitter stream is flying by me, or this may be on the page, but it's going to be 50 posts down later. The fact is, you have to assume whatever you post or put on the web is going to be there forever, and some search engine someday is going to find it and attribute it to you. So I think, as the Diocese of Bath and Wales said, as John Tidy had pointed out, if your mom won't like you saying it and you don't think God's going to like the fact you said it, you probably shouldn't post it. You know, that's a pretty good set of guidelines there. And security, obviously, is important. If you're not sure if it's going to affect someone else in a negative way or reflect on them in a way that's not positive, that's also a red flag to be very careful about what you're going to say or do online.